Uh, Shukriya. Sebastian, that side. Yeah. Good afternoon. I understand the last session delayed and many people are still having tea and coffee. They will join us eventually. This is the only session about coastal commons in this entire land commons conference. So at times it happens in the way that people really don't see that connections very well. So, but I think coastal commons is when we say it is equally diverse than the land commons is, and which is less talked about in India and elsewhere. So these are things we are talking about: fishery stocks, we are talking of beaches, we are talking of mangroves, we are talking of wetlands, we are talking of ephemeral commons. There's so many. There are areas where that appears and disappears because these are all river deltas, alluvion-deluvian processes. So and there are so many acts policies people dependent on it equally, if not equal number like on a forest and land, but equally significant number of people depend for their lives and livelihoods on these resources. And it also gives very critical ecosystem services that all type of ecosystem services you talk about, it's there. And ocean has been the hotbed of discussion of late about whole climate change, international regulations, and these things. So I don't want to complicate the situation here. There are eminent panelists here. I just want to introduce our panelists, galaxy of panelists here. One person is yet to join. She is just running from the airport. She'll join us anytime. So we have now 4 panelists with us. Dr. Amalendu Jyotisi. He's a professor in Azim Premji University. And he has enormous experience of working on coast and coastal issues in global projects for Fish for Food and Dried Fish Matters and many other programs. So I'm fortunate, privileged to have him as our panelist today, and he has agreed kindly to moderate this session as well. So he has 2 roles. He would speak his mind as well as he will make others speak as well. So welcome to the dais. Hi. The other, you can see Aarti. Aarti Sridhar. Aarti is a founding trustee of Dakshin Foundation, and you all know about Dakshin. I need not to talk about it. That's the organizations working on coast and coastal spaces for long. Aarti, we are also happy to have Aarti as a panelist with us. We have Supriya Bora, firebrand writer on justice, coastal issues. She writes about climate change, coastal justice, lives of people. So we are happy to have her today. We have Sebastian Rodrigues. He represents people. He is a national platform for fish workers, and they actually it's a confederation of fisheries unions across the country, and he comes from that space. And Sebastian has a lot of experience of working on people's livelihoods and blue economy and those kind of issues. We have Dr. Jenia Mukherjee with us, just running from the airport straight. I think we would allow her to take some breathing. So Dr. Jenia Mukherjee is, how can I describe her? She's an associate professor in IIT Kharagpur. Work on transdisciplinarity approaches with the communities and the issues. She's thickly engaged in wetlands of East Kolkata wetlands and Sundarbans systems, and she has also worked in Indonesia, Bangladesh, and other places. We are looking at transboundary, transitional issues across borders. So we are happy to have her today. Is one of our panelists in this session. Now, in this session, we are trying to explore a few things about basically how do we situate the whole coastal debate into the larger commons debate in this country. What are the issues and challenges, and how, more precisely, how to really see the way ahead, how to really look at those issues, and then what are the solutions that is emerging, not even solutions, but the directions that will emerge from this kind of a space. So I won't take more time. My name is Shishir, anyway, Shishir Pradhan. So I'm from Common Ground and another facility is called Turning Tide Facilities. So I'll now hand over the mic to Amalindu to take it forward. Thank you.
Get started, right? So I'm not sure. Can we speak only in English, or we should mix Hindi and English? All that depending on how the yeah. So I'm not sure how good everybody is with Hindi here, but we'll try our best. Also, we'll try mixing both the things. And my sense is that most of the audience here either they are curious about coastal issues or self-selected themselves to join this panel over other panels. So given that as a situation, I think we can make this discussion a little more conversational so that we understand that what we know about coast and coastal commons and what are the different kind of issues that is coming and challenges, and is there any hopes to kind of deal with those kind of things. I think those are some three broad level questions. And what I was thinking that I'll kind of give a little brief about for at least the issues that I have been seeing in working on the coastal issues, particularly in Karnataka coast. And then what we can do is the panelists will kind of take 5 minutes each and kind of highlight what are the biggest concerns that we have and from our point of view, and then take more of questions from audience. If enough questions are not coming from audience, I insist that there should be more questions from the audience. If just in case it doesn't come, then we should be prepared to ask more questions to each other. So I think that would be a way to kind of go forward. And when time is up, Shishir can tell us that time is up and we should kind of wind it up, right? So that's a broad format. It's agreeable to all of us, right? Yeah, so broadly, I think all of us are, those who have not worked on coastal issues, I think we have seen coast in different format, maybe as a tourism place, nice place to go, nice beaches, or we have heard about like the tsunami that happened, a lot of disaster that took place. So we have heard about those kind of disasters. So beyond that, our engagement in coast has been limited, but it's quite a interesting, complicated, dynamic space that the coastal space itself. And if you add communities who have been working in this space, it adds another layer of complexity. And what is happening to that coast, if we look at that, then in recent years particularly, or recent decades, then it brings in a lot of concerns to our mind. So looking, when I started working on this coast, my starting point was essentially to look at fish as an important resource, which is not singular resource, but varieties of fishes, small fishes, large fishes, pelagic fishes, demersal fishes. So varieties of fishes that is there, that exist in the sea, and how this fish is an important source of nutrition. And for a country like India, where a majority of population are malnourished, women are anemic, and fish provides that kind of a rich nutrition, and we felt that it's an important space to work on. And that's where my initiation in this coastal issues started, or fisheries in general started. And when I got into the coastal areas, then figured out number of things are happening, particularly in last 2 decades. Broadly, if I have to classify that, I would say that there is something happening, what we call the ecological dispositions. What is happening in the sea, in the coast, and because a lot of rivers kind of drain out into the sea in the coast, right? So, and those estuarine areas are quite a rich, diverse areas. So inclusive of all these spaces, basically, what kind of ecological changes that is happening, that is one. second one I saw was the communities who are engaged in this different kinds of activities. It can be fisheries, it can be fish processing, particularly fish drying, where a large number of women particularly work in this space, and also other kinds of activities, including using varieties of uh, mangrove and other kind of forest resources, and salt making. All those are part of this fisheries and related coastal activities. Bivalves are an important part of it. Bivalves means, if you know oysters, that is something, that is the closest representative that we can say. That people know oyster, but not necessarily different varieties of bivalves. So livelihoods are dependent on these resources. It's just not in the coast, not on the sea alone, but also estuarine and the tidal areas as well. So livelihood kind of disposition was another dimension of it. And of course, I started with looking at it that where this fish is going basically, and that's the utilization. And that itself was kind of a concerning point to see how it can lead to also food and nutrition disposition. So these are the three broad areas that we kind of scape-wise we looked at. And what is happening in the coast from each of these perspectives, if you see that there are large number of big boats, what we call trawlers and purseners, who have been, that those numbers are increasing over the years. And a lot of people who are coming to work in these boats, they are also known as migrants. Many of them have never experienced a sea in their life. They are coming from hinterlands, actually, Chhattisgarh, from Uttar Pradesh, from Jharkhand, from Odisha, and different places. And so there is a change that is happening, that the big is becoming bigger, and small-scale fishers who use a kind of a small motorized boat or non-motorized boats, though their numbers are large, but they are in that space they have to struggle to catch the fish. So the inequality in the sea, in some sense, is kind of dramatically increasing. And though it started in 1960s and 70s with this, but by now, when we come to 2020s, we see that these inequalities have dramatically increased over the years. And with that, who is catching the fish and where the fish is going, there is a change that is happening. And very intricate change that we see is that a lot of fish caught by the big trawlers, they used to call it bycatch, and now that is going to fish meal industries. From fish meal industry, it goes as aquafeed, and then we have created a lot of these shrimp farms, which are basically aquaculture farms, and from there this shrimp is exported. So the fish is kind of channelized in a different ways. That is the kind of change that we are seeing. And coastal areas, there are multiple players who stake a claim on that. There are communities, one part of it, but there are hotel and tourism. Those are important part of this. There are fishing harbors. There are ports that is coming in the coast areas. There are a lot of infrastructure development that is happening. We also have created something called ecotourism beaches, famously known as blue flag beaches in India. So those are also kind of exclusionary areas that is being created. A lot of different kind of fishing activities are happening, which is basically in these commons, in some sense it is decommonizing it, like what we call cage culture. So if you go to estuarine areas across the countries, you'll find there is a lot of sea bass culture that is happening, which is again getting exported. And you will see in the estuaries, there are big blue color cages that is being kind of put there. So in a sense, which were a common place for fishing ground for many communities who are traditionally involved in this, these commons are now becoming a kind of a small little islands of private space that is happening there, right? So these are multiple issues that we have seen. So I will stop here and kind of will take a round, whatever way that you, maybe we'll start with Aarti, then.
Just want to ask the crowd if they need some.
Yeah.
You want to ask them about their engagement.
So I can do that. Okay, so maybe, yeah, before kind of asking everybody else, because we also would like to connect with you. So how many of you are working in coastal fisheries related issues? If you, any of you have been kind of engaged in those kind of activities? You don't have to raise your hands, is it? So
One person here.
one person. तो समुंदर और समुंदर के आसपास के इलाका समझ में आता है थोड़ा सा, बाकी लोगों तो अच्छा. So we'll keep our understanding to that level, right? So that people have not experienced the coast so much. So keeping that in mind, I think we should have our deliberation in that from that perspective, right? I think all of us are quite fine. So how we'll go about? I will start. I'm in the center. I could have been in one corner. Then so Sebastian, we'll let us start with Sebastian. Right there.
थैंक यू. हम कोस्टल से थोड़ा इंट्रोडक्शन करके हम शुरू करेंगे. कोस्ट क्या होता है? व्हाट इज़ कोस्ट? मैं मछुआरों के संगठन में काम करता हूँ, NPSW, नेशनल प्लेटफॉर्म फॉर स्मॉल स्केल फिश वर्कर्स. मैं गोवा से बिलोंग करता हूँ. और थोड़ा इंट्रोडक्शन, गोवा का नाम तो आपने सुना ही होगा, बम्बई का नाम सुना ही होगा, चेन्नई का नाम सुना ही होगा, कोलकाता का नाम सुना ही होगा. ये सब कोस्टल प्लेसेस हैं. मैंगलोर का नाम सुना ही होगा. शायद आप गोवा में घूमने के लिए गए होंगे. मस्ट हैव स्पेंड योर हनीमून समटाइम some beaches in somewhere in the world, if not in India. Those people who work with fish, what are they called? In India, in some parts, they are called fishermen. In some parts, they are called watermen. In the US and America, they are known as watermen. So we are here to talk about water, coast. Or which coast we are talking about? We have, in India, we have got marine fisheries, samundri machwari. We have inland fisheries, variety of fisheries in India. We have cold fisheries. We have dam fisheries, reservoir fisheries, variety of fisheries. And we are involved in various parts of India, around 18 states and Andaman and Nicobar Islands, working with small communities. So, the issue that my colleague has raised, Amitendra, I will not raise the same issues, but little bit I will talk about Bombay, south of Bombay. Because I will present a case study for you about you spoke about blue economy. I will go straight to the blue economy. Blue economy क्या है? All our chairs are blue. Is it about blue? Is it about blue color? We have economy, paisa. We have economy, money. So the money that is blue, is that blue economy is all about? The blue comes from the color we see of our seas. The Raman effect has explained to us why our seas are blue. And then we see these seas are giving an opportunity to make money. And some agencies are making money out of it. And how this money is made. I mean, this is all the issues are all about. So a lot of people want to make money. If you see Indian government's latest budget that is presented, it's all about marine budget is all about making money from the coast, doing a lot of investment on intensive aquaculture farming. Open access fishing has gone in the kind of a background. So what kind of fishing we used to see in India historically? Hamara itihas kya tha? Up to 1950s, 1960s, most of our fisheries, almost 100%, we were small-scale fishing. People used to go in the waters and catch fish, sell fish, eat fish. They were healthy. There were no trawlers. There were no purseaners. These trawlers came to India from somewhere in Europe. There was World War II. And in the World War II, there was mines that was put, bombs that were located in some water bodies in Norway. And they created kind of nets, drag nets to get those landmines out from their rivers. But they found that while doing so, they also was able to get a lot of fish in the process. So they said, very good, अच्छी बात है. World War ने हमने बहुत अच्छा नया तरीका सिखाया मछली पकड़ने का. So they started exporting this technology. So we have really what we imported in India is a war technique. It's a part of the war economy that got adapted into fishing, and it turned into a war on fisheries in India. Mass of people got pushed into deprivation, poverty, conflicts, fights. मैं भी अभी बता रहा होता मेरे colleagues को यहाँ सुप्रिया और आरती को, मेरा जन्म एक बीच पे हुआ 1973 में. I was born on a beach, on Mandira beach, and over there, my family, my mother's family, was involved in fishing. And over there, there were lots of, on 100%, entire fisheries was small-scale fishing. Rapons, we used to call them rapons in Goa. And there, we have a situation wherein the trawling starts in 70s, around that time, 73, 74, 75. And they used to come to coast, very close to the coast, and take away the fish. And my family people, they were not getting any fish. Entire village people were not getting fish. This is a story across Goa and across other parts of India as well, not just Goa. But I'm telling about Goa because I belong there, and I have personal information, shared these memories from my childhood. Then there were fights. What type of fights used to take place? Conflicts. Today my PhD is on conflicts on fisheries in environmental ethics. So what kind of conflict that I experienced at that time? They used to come, they used to take, and this to be objected. Then the trawlers used to come, tie the boats to the trawlers, take them around 10 kilometers away in the Arabian Sea, beat them up. So my family members were beaten up. There were bleedings, stoned, and somehow they escaped from that. Then they go retaliation. Many villages got together, took over the trawlers, brought them to the shore, set them on fire. There were violent conflicts. Then some villages set police stations, police jeeps on fire. There was a huge amount of violence that took place in 70s and early 80s. Until 80s when the law got passed to ban this trawling from within 5 kilometers. But that's not an entire solution. But anyway, it got some respite legally, but that remains there. It is really not implemented and still not being implemented, but law is there. But anyway, this is the beginning of things. But today we have a situation wherein 80% of our fish, marine fisheries, comes from these large-scale fisheries, and 20% comes from small-scale fisheries. And that was the opposite the case sometime in 1960s. And the tremendous amount of pressure has been put on coastal communities in various ways, many, many ways. We'll just give an example of one about fishing. This conflict inside the water. There are conflicts also on the land. There's a demand craze for sand. There's a rapid amount of sand extraction on the beaches. There's a demand for industrialization of the coast. Then we have got, in Bombay is an excellent example. I was talking about Bombay. Nhava Sheva Port or Jawaharlal Nehru Port Authority, which was Port Trust earlier. This was two islands, Nhava and Sheva, on the mouth of the river there. They were connected and made into port 38 years back, 1986. And today we have that situation, gradual expansion of JNPT, gradual urbanization, industrialization of the coast. And what they did to fisheries, that is important, because I know I visited that place last month. And I've seen that mouth of the river was 150 meters wide. And reclaimed the river, mouth of the river, and reduced it to 50 meters. So you can imagine the flow of water was blocked drastically, dramatically affecting the reduction of the flow of water. Water could not reach, and that gave rise to mangroves all over. The other side of the interior of the coast, we have got expansion of the urbanization. CIDCO wants to expand the urbanization. They take over the areas, reclaim the areas of the coast, and give them the sectors, divide the land into sectors and sector. And then it becomes the sector 1, sector 2, they create for building of cities. And the villages which are located there, Koli Vadas, they have to sacrifice themselves, sacrifice their livelihood, sacrifice their entire culture, take some money, and keep quiet. And their fishing spaces there are being converted into mangrove parks. In Bombay, there is near Nehru, there is a famous one called Flamingo Park. Then give it a new name, Flamingo Parks. The birds come, name the parks after. And then, okay, parks is fine. But then the rules of the park is that you cannot do fishing. Fishing is banned. So all kinds of these conflicts are there, and we are in a very, very conflict situation. And our coasts are really war zones, which we don't really understand. And I think it's important that we need to understand this and reach out. And how do we reach out? How do we reach out? Is there any connection between coast and the hinterland? One fisherman, P.P. John, who is my colleague in the National Council from Kerala, he said, the sea begins on the mountain because rivers that flow into the sea are originated mostly in the mountains and at several places the mountains. And I think it's important to have this connection. And when we talk in our category of analysis, we say coastal mountains, we say coastal commons, we say hinterland commons. These are all commons. We have to understand the connection and intersections and see how we need to link it up. And I think we need a collaboration, number of ways of collaboration. We need a collaboration within, across the coast, collaboration, we need coast and the hinterlands, we need a collaboration across the disciplines, we need a collaboration between people and the media, people and academia, and most importantly, we need to have a strong force to organize coastal people themselves, because that's very, very important. Because in international legal framework that we have, SSF guidelines that are passed, and India is signatory to it in 2014, fishing communities has been designated, official role has been designated as stewards, stewards of the coast, stewards of the waters. And stewards means it's a duty. And how do we exercise it? I link it up with our own Indian Constitution, Article 51 AG, which bestows a duty upon every citizen of India. And I think we'll link up the two and move ahead, and it's very, very important to do. There are other complications as well, but we will leave that. I will leave that out for other speakers, or maybe I can come later on if time permits. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So shall we move to Aarti now? And Aarti has been working not only the mainland, that Indian coast that we have seen, but also the two islands. Quite often we forget about them when we talk about different kinds of issues. We don't talk much about Andaman Nicobar or Lakshadweep, what happens, right? So you can actually bring in a variety of issues that is associated with the coastal, maybe whatever that comes to your mind, but also a little bit of gender issues that specifically.
You can hear, right? This mic's working. Yeah, I just wanted to say that when we talk about coastal issues, one of the things that even walking around the rooms here and everything, no, it's a little like, okay, आप क्या करते हैं? अच्छा, coastal area में काम करते हैं, okay, ठीक है, bye bye. क्योंकि थोड़ा difficult है ना to connect कि अपना मुद्दा है, आपका मुद्दा है. What is the thing that connects? So we are always, struggling to see, okay, how to tell, how to say कि भाई साहब, your 5 minutes is worth it. कि हमको भी बात करना है. What can we say about the coastal story? So I just want, you all to also think about it, that thanks to many historians who have now told this story, we are now realizing that India that we understand today is not, we often think, oh, India is a land-based, agriculture-dependent country. But it has a history which was very, very watery, an oceanic history. So actually, we are a maritime kind of country. So if you just think about, the main cities he mentioned, right? Today, India is, Delhi is the capital, but Calcutta, Bombay, Chennai, these were all the entry points into making this nation what it is. So when you think about things like that, also the fact that, so many of the goods and services that we are dependent on, not just fish for nutrition, or, you're trying to think of, okay, how can we connect coast and, some Delhi wala in there. But actually, a whole lot of consumption, all those circles and circulations, जो कल का plenary में लोग बोला बाजार के बारे में, आजकल बाजार is planetary. And the ocean is the place from where, not just that it moves through these places, that if we don't think about the ocean as if हम लोग सब land से जुड़े हैं, ocean का कोई लेना देना नहीं है, क्योंकि या तो हमारे NGO वहाँ काम नहीं करते, या मैं मछली नहीं खाता हूँ, or some such thing like that, no? But actually, generations depend on the oceans. So that is one thing to understand. And the other thing is to, आज सब लोग इधर commons के बारे में बात करने के लिए आए हैं. So to see that, okay, oceans and coastal areas में commons का मतलब क्या है? And ये अभी के टाइम का डेफिनेशन नहीं ले सकते. We should understand it a little bit more historically. And I think one thing to understand is that अभी ये ग्लोबल साउथ की कोई भी कंट्रीज़ के बारे में अगर आप बात करेंगे तो आज कॉलोनियलिज्म के बारे में बिना बात किए कुछ समझ में नहीं आएगा. So it's not like पहले से हमारा कॉमन्स था, and we have to understand कि colonial powers के आने के बाद क्या हुआ. So even the very fact that our nations are also, our waters, the oceans are also carved out. ऐसा नहीं है कि so there was an understanding कि पूरा ocean मतलब सबका है. But वो काफ़ी problematic था क्योंकि उसको colonial powers ने उसका abuse किया है to understand that, okay, actually ये सबका है, so we can go everywhere, we can take everything. At the same time, they also carved out certain things कि आपको restrict करने के लिए. तो मैं बहुत ही simplified, fast way में बोल रही हूँ, but आजकल ये अगर हमारे central government को समझाना है या कोई भी state government को समझाना है कि no, you have to think about ocean, sea and coast very differently, ये सबसे बड़ा barrier है कि इनको कैसे समझाएं कि these fluid spaces, इनका governance का history बहुत अलग है. और आज जो communities भी है, जो सेबेस्टियन ने बात किया है, काफ़ी diversity है ऐसे communities में. जितने अलग अलग मैंग्रोव्स वेटलैंड्स हैं उतने ही कम्युनिटीज़ जातियाँ हैं, फिशिंग कास्ट्स हैं, सब लोग एकजुट भी नहीं हैं. देयर आर लॉट्स ऑफ डिफरेंसेस इन दिस एंड उनका भी हिस्ट्रीज. सो टुडे अ बिग प्रॉब्लम इज हु इज़ अ फिशर, राइट? एंड the other day I was in Tamil Nadu talking to some fishers and they were saying, ID card is now telling you who is a fisherman. The fisheries department gives you an ID card. And he was saying, even an auto wala is getting ID card. So it's really difficult to say who is a fisherman. वो कितना जन्म का whatever history trace करना पड़ेगा for this. And there are conflicts within communities, inside communities, and of course with the state about this. And one final thing just to say about even the state, no? जो सरकार है, ये काफ़ी सोशल साइंटिस्ट ने फिशिंग कम्युनिटीज़ के बारे में बात किया है कि ये अंग्रेज़ी में कहते हैं लिमिनल स्पेसेस है, जो इन बिटवीन लोग हैं, जो ना यहाँ के हैं ना वहाँ के हैं. तो अगर कोई ऐसे कंडीशन में है तो हमारा इंस्टिंक्ट है कि इसको इस बॉक्स में डालो या उस बॉक्स में डालो. तो हमारा जो अभी आप सबके स्टेट में एक डिपार्टमेंट का ऑफ फिशरीज़ तो होगा. पहले ये चेन्नई स्टेट में स्टार्ट किया था, बट इसका हिस्ट्री भी है. इट इज़ कम आउट ऑफ एन एग्रीकल्चर मेंटालिटी कि अच्छा फिश है. इट वाज आल्सो अ कॉलोनियल रिसोर्स. जो फैमिन्स चल रहे थे उनको मीट करने के लिए. सो आर एंटायर, ऑल्दो हम you can say that maybe it is the natural orientation should be towards the ocean, but India as a state has tried to make the fisherman as much of a industrial worker or a peasant. And they are maybe a little more, the small scale sector I'm saying, maybe a little more aligned to the sensibility of a hunter-gatherer community. But आज ये capitalism के वजह से all those have changed a fair bit. So I'm just setting this ground because commons में कर क्या सकते हैं उसके पहले आप barrier ही समझ लें तो. But also importantly to see that India is not India without the Indian Ocean. So and that's not a small thing to say either.
Okay, taking forward Aarti's discussion about the various barriers that exist, I would just like to talk a little bit about what is the what is the common space, what does coastal commons means, and how are people who use this common space, who are the people who use this common space, and how are they getting impacted by various different kinds of stakeholders that are now trying to come into the picture. तो एक केस स्टडी है मेरे पास, एक स्टोरी किया था मैंने कुछ साल पहले about this coastal village called Honavar, which Amlindu is also very aware of the issue. It's a coastal village in the northern coastal part of Karnataka. वहाँ पे काफ़ी मछुआरे फिशिंग करते हैं. वो पर्टिकुलर विलेज है वो एक एस्चुरी एरिया में है. इट्स फ्लैंक्ड बाय शरावती रिवर ऑन वन साइड. And there is this, it's a beach, and on the beach, people go fishing, they park their boats, they put their nets, they use that area, 2,000 to 3,000 fisherwomen use that area to dry their fish. Fish dry करके वो लोग fish sell करते हैं. That region is also known for a very high export of dry fishing. So that's a huge economy that it's dependent on. And that region is a coastal sand spit, which essentially means कि it's रेत का बना है, it's attached to the land and it moves out into the sea and it is very erosive in nature. So sand comes and goes seasonally there. तो कोई history of वहाँ पे कुछ किसी चीज़ की कोई construction की कोई history कभी हुई नहीं है. So that area is a common space which has been used by fishermen and fisherwomen for generations to do their various fishing activities. So a few years ago, there was a minor port that was going to be constructed there. Public-private partnership में port construction उसमें वहाँ पे होना था, बता दिया था. तो फिशर पीपल को किसी ने ये नहीं बताया था कि ये यहाँ पे पोर्ट कंस्ट्रक्ट होने वाला है. उनको सिर्फ एक नोटिस मिल गया था कुछ महीने पहले कि देयर विल बी अ पोर्ट कंस्ट्रक्शन दैट विल हैपन हियर एंड वी विल हैव अ डिस्कशन अबाउट इट. तो पब्लिक हियरिंग होती है. पब्लिक हियरिंग के दौरान मिनट्स ऑफ द मीटिंग के जो हमने पढ़े थे उसमें एज सच कुछ एंगेजमेंट नहीं था लोगों के साथ कि ये किस तरह से होना चाहिए, आपको सही लगता है या नहीं लगता है. सिर्फ उनको बताया था कि ये एरियाज़ यहाँ पे हम यूज़ करेंगे, यहाँ से लोग निकालेंगे और आपको जॉब्स मिलेंगी और बस ऐसे होगा. सो दैट्स हाउ इट वाज ऑल रिकॉर्डेड. सो व्हेन the fishers protested and put up their case, this was the bone of contention, like who does this land actually belong to and who actually uses it. The port authorities will say that this land has always belonged to us, but you've never used it. It's been used by the people who live next to it, and now you're displacing them to build your port. So when we talk about the commons, it's also very important to understand what are the legal frameworks that exist within these commons land, and how do you justify somebody else just coming and taking claim on it and eroding all the people that have always existed there. That's
fantastic. We wanted to give some breathing space to Chinya, so maybe you can bring some additional aspects of Sundarban that you have been working there, and what this community, fishing community, means. A little bit maybe about women in fishing.
So thank you very much. It really has been, am I audible?
Yeah.
So it really has been enriching, this discussions, and I would definitely like to focus on Sundarbans, but before that I would also like to, I think, emphasize on Aarti's point that it's high time that the focus should be on waters. So when I say waters, it's many waters. It's the seas and the oceans and the ponds, even ponds, of course, and the canals and creeks and like rivers, all kinds of biomes. So I think on one hand, there is so much of discussion which is going on blue economy. And we really don't know what's going to happen and what would be the implications. But I also see researchers and people coming from social sciences background also becoming very excited about this fact. And when it's like blue economy, it seems to be a bit a glorious kind of a connotation. But I think a little bit of apprehension to that, and I would like to kind of shift the attention to something which is blue humanities. right? Because I think historians, they had really played a very important role in focusing on the role of these waters as interconnected systems. So it is not that, that the seas are not connected to rivers and glaciers and lakes and other biomes. So in critical ocean studies, I think it is important to see the interconnections between, this oceanography and limnology. Like inland fishing, because this is exactly what Sundarbans is made up of. Or maybe the Chilika Lagoon to a great extent, where how freshwater ecosystems and salt water, they interact with each other, and what kind of implications that actually have on the communities. So it is not a good idea to actually kind of box these communities as they are, this particular category, and their livelihoods depend on this particular ecosystem. So the whole focus and the legal framework would be to rejuvenate this system. It's not like that, because the understanding, the discussion has to be basin scale and beyond. Right? So coming to this particular point of the blue humanities again, I think that what is fascinating about this framework is that just few years back, I think in 2011, there's a historian whose name is John Gillis. He talked about what he called the blue hole in environmental history. So which means that, because again, as the panelists have discussed, that when we are discussing South Asia, more specifically India, then the colonial context, it has to be the default context, by default context. So, now this, for a long period of time, the entire focus was actually on land. Why? Because land provided the state revenues, and then the waters were also, those waters were thought to be significant, which could again, offer revenues to the state, because what happened is that there was this binary which came up between land and water. Then what about these fluid spaces? What about the wetlands? What about the marshes? What about the boglands, fenlands? So this binary, between land and water, I think it has created lot of confusion and complexities. And again, Sundarbans, if you focus on Sundarbans, you see how this barrier is so prominent and what kind of impacts it is actually having on the coastal communities, but also inland communities. And you cannot segregate between coastal and inland communities in the Sundarbans. Because what about the forest fishers? The fishers who go to the ocean, the Bay of Bengal, and stay there for 1 month, come back. But then, the challenges, the barriers, the different kinds of impediments that they're facing. And now several of them, that's a hopeful narrative. I will maybe not say it about the hopeful narrative right now, but just placing the challenges. But now many of these marine fishers and forest fishers also, they are trying to get converted into, inland fishers. So why? What are the reasons? What are the various, variables and parameters which are dictating this? So it's a very complex, I think it's a very complex scenario. And my final point is that, as I also, I'm from Kolkata, born and brought up in Kolkata. And I have also worked in the Kolkata wetlands. So Kolkata wetlands is again a very fascinating ecosystem. I think I don't think it will be an exaggeration if I say that Kolkata survives because the East Kolkata wetlands actually survive. So without the wetlands, the city of Kolkata cannot function, because till date Kolkata does not have a separate sewage treatment plant. And every day, roughly 750 to 800 metric tons of waste, waste means like effluent, liquid waste, is thrown into the East Kolkata wetlands. And then fish, different varieties of fish, 22 tons of fish and 150 tons of vegetables are produced every day. And I think Amalendu talked about different stakeholders. So I think it is again, so on one hand, many waters, and on the other hand, many stakeholders or different stakeholders, different interests, but also, different species and their interactions. So my final point, now I have not focused on Sundarban either, but it is also about I think it is also high time to think about the non-human world or the more than human world as well. So when we are thinking of the fishes and the fish, we also need to think about several other species that are part of this combined ecosystem, and how like one impact, it really creates spiral effects in the entire, like the entire system. So it is very important to understand these interactions and feedback loops.
Now, how much time we have? We have some time. Yeah, so we'll take some questions, but I think this discussion, what as a concern that comes out across all of us when we spoke, I think the main question is about what is that boundary of these commons when we are talking about coastal and marine space. And some of you would have heard of Elinor Ostrom, who talked about the 8 principles of managing commons, and one of this is the first question that comes was the boundary. What is the boundary relating to that? But it may be relatively easy when we are talking about village commons or we are talking about forest commons. The boundaries are kind of relatively easier to demarcate. But when it comes to, say, even the pastorals who are moving around, or the char, the wetlands, where the floodplains are quite dynamic, or when it comes to the coast, estuarine, and marine scape, it is quite dynamic. And in such a dynamic scape, the livelihoods are kind of dependent on that based on those dynamism. And multiple agencies starts taking claim around that, like how the ocean's boundary will be built, the conventions that we had to identify what would be the 200 kilometers from the coast, that is what the kind of a national boundary that we thought about, but then India and Sri Lanka come pretty closer to each other in 12 kilometers distance. Then how to draw the boundary? And when we can't draw the right kind of boundary, then a lot of conflicts do come in between states. Then who would be the agency who would be in charge of it? Then we say that the state governments would have a kind of a boundary around 12 nautical miles, whereas the central authorities can have more than that. Then state put certain kind of regulations around that. In the estuarine scape and other scapes, there are different sets of community who are involved in. For example, one article that I read is called Caste in Casting the Net. So and there are 2 castes called Harikanta and Ambika, both are in Karnataka coast, who have been there. One caste throws the net like this, and one caste throws the net like this. And they generally do fishing in the estuarine space. And that determines to what extent what deeper they will go into this water body to cast their net. And that itself in some ways kind of defines their space, that where Harikantas will be working and where Ambikas will be working, right? So these are different ways that the boundaries are also being created or identified or understood. I think that's this marine ski and coastal scape that way brings a lot more complexity. And from the colonial space, the kind of transition that we have seen is more of a sedentarization. So like in pastoral case, we have seen that now you put your livestock together in one place and do dairy farm and all those kind of things. Similarly, in fisheries scape, we have seen that we would do more of aquaculture and those kind of activity. Whereas catching the fishes which are wild, or collecting or the animals who can kind of move around from one place to another for hundreds of kilometers, on those dynamic space where commons exist, the ethos of commons exist, I think on that scape, we have not yet identified what could be a right kind of a system which would be a lot more just, a lot more equitable, a lot more human, where human blue humanity can actually survive, or at least human and other species ecosystem can survive and thrive together. So I think what we'll do is now we'll let us take questions from you, and then we'll see whosoever finds more competent to kind of address those questions.
So I came from Karnataka coastal area. It starts from Karwar and ends at Mangalore. So Madam has explained about Kasaragod coastal situation. So number of eyes on the Uttara Kannada coast. The first is naval base. Naval base has removed more than 3,000 to 4,000 fisher community from the coast, and they are resettled in not coastal area, who are dependent on coastal catching fish and all. Now they are unable to catch the fish, and they have to forcefully do other way of livelihood for their survival. They have given some money, lakhs or 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, up to 10 lakhs, but it has spent already within a year for drinking or some construction, improvement of house and all. Now their livelihood base has lost. Another thing is Sagarmala project. Number of thermal projects are coming, hydel projects are coming, and ports are coming. In all the way, this common land is not considered. So this coastal area is considered as a government land. And even for, there is no space for drying fish. They have to dry the fish in the port authorities area. So anytime they can clear. In half of the fish was dried, then it will be cleared and everything will be vanished. For example, in Kasaragod. So they are making lot of protest against Sagarmala projects, ports and all, even though nobody is caring. So in other projects, in Uttara Kannada, more than 7-8 dams for the rivers. But most of the places, resettlement of the farmers has done in another agriculture area. But in case of fishermen, they are not resettled in other coastal area or where they can continue their livelihood base, whatever they know. These freshwater fishermen can do freshwater fish only. They can't do sea fish, some places. Or small boat owners and fishermen, they can't do any other livelihood activities. So in this situation, government should, or the policy maker should take some decision to replace them from coast to coastal places or nearby coastal area. Then they can do some fishing activities. Other than fishing, how they can survive? These are all the problems we are facing. Another thing is the fishermen are highly what you call climate change. They are facing problems. For example, recently in Ankola, landslide has happened. All the rise of sea level and the water level of the river, and around 15 to 16 houses collapsed, and a few people have died in Ankola. And also when the sea level rises, so entire the riverside houses will be collapsed and water will come inside. Recently we are distributing shelter to 2,000 families in Uttara Kannada and part of Baindur. So around 8 to 9 rivers are joining to sea from Western Ghat. And all the places, wherever you go in coastal area, all are submerged. Families are submerged because of the rising in sea level and rising in water level. Nobody is caring, and even resettlement is also not happening. Nearby houses are every year, almost 2-3 years once, water will come and the families will be submerged and some this collapsed. These are all the things has to be taken care by the policies, and also we have, as an NGO or this common convene should consider this point.
Very important point. Thank you so much. So, yeah, there is one more question this side, or thought, whatever. Yeah.
Just I would like to point out one thing about the Sundarban. Myself, Nandalal Bakshi, one organization called Tagore Society for Rural Development, working in Sundarban area since last 40 years. So one major issue in this Sundarban area is related to common, that is embankment of the river. Near about 4,000 kilometers of embankment there. But due to the different type of cyclones, Bulbul, Yas, Ayla, so many, and so many. Due to this cyclone, this embankment are breaking every year, and thousands of acres cultivable and crops are damaging every year. So, and another thing is Sundarban is the name of the one plant Sundari. That all the plants, type of plants are now extinct or endangered. About 40 plus species of mangroves in the Sundarban area, but at now more than 10 are extinct and another are going to be extinct and endangered position. That are the major threat of the Sundarban, because this type of cyclones are coming every year, but there is no barrier and with the natural barrier with the mangroves. So this is the major threats of the Sundarban area. All of the comes into the commons. And another is for the livelihood, not only fishery, there is so many household people are depend on the honey collection from the Sundarban. In the Sundarban area, there are three type of area. One is open for all, another for is buffer zone, another is strictly reserved area. Most of the people are enter into the reserve area. That's the danger for tiger and other animal for attack. And there are so many people are killing killed every year. So there's a huge issue in this area. So all these issues and concern are to consider in the
very important point. In fact, the tiger is a very peculiar species in Sundarban. One side you need tigers to enhance tourism, another side you see huge number of tiger widows, that is what we are calling them, because of tiger killing them. So how to kind of find a balance is a big question. Yeah. Two questions. We'll take two questions, yeah, and then we'll wind up. Yeah.
Ask you.
Hi, my name is Anmol. I can just speak without the mic. My name is Anmol. I am from Land Conflict Watch. So something which has been said by everyone in this panel so far is this binary between land and water. But like as a lawyer, what I've always been interested in is what kind of formal or informal rights may any community have over these liminal spaces as everyone has kind of alluded to. So like whether it's marshes or like coastal areas and so on, if everyone, like if the question is for everyone, like anyone who can answer, what kind of rights do we actually see these communities exercising, or like are there any recognized rights from the government? Like is it more like a formal property rights over these like liminal spaces, or is it more like leasing rights or like temporary permits to just fish without any formal protections? And secondly, just the same question, but what about the same situation with migrant fishermen? Do they have any rights at all? Like if anyone could issue any clarifications?
Yeah, I don't know who. I'll give the migrant question to Aarti. I know what she has done before. Maybe Sebastian, would you like to talk about this? How many different kinds of authorities that the fishers have to negotiate with on this fishing community? That itself will kind of give a glimpse of what is, who are the kind of actors there.
But first I'll address what's your name, sir? Thank you. Let me address first the question of Ganapati, but that's very important. Because this question that he raised about displacement is a very heart of this whole fisheries. Because if you displace a fisherman and tell the fisherman or fisherwoman to go into agriculture, that you compromise the very identity of fishing. You are no longer fisher. And if you accept this principle of displacement, that means there's going to be end of fishing for small-scale communities across India. In fact, this is exactly what we objected. During last month, there was a meeting at Rome, FAO headquarters, and African continent promoted and proposed a resolution for alternative livelihoods for those who are displaced or threatened in African continent. And we, from NCSW, objected to it. He said, if we accept this globally, then what is going to happen is that we are going to compromise the very identity of the fishing. So we suggested that word alternative be replaced with additional livelihoods. So you go somewhere for some time, but you come back to fishing. Your identity legally is not compromised. This is very, very important. And if you see the conditions of these people where we are rehabilitated, very, very poor and pathetic. I have seen in Bombay, the people who are displaced because of a JNPT, people have to live like worms. There are no toilet facilities. The sewage is flowing all over and is absolutely in shambles. And no legal titles on top of it. Regarding the question of rights, unfortunately, this is another very serious issue that NPSW is actually is very time and again we have articulated. Fishing communities doing fishing over water has got no rights. They have got certain licenses for certain period of time, but that has also been eroding. The kind of system that we have seen that's coming as contractor system, Tekadari system, and that is really, really bad. As a result of this, anybody can go to fishing bodies or fishing areas and do any kind of things, and fishing communities are put to the margins. So if you say about blue economy, these are the blue margins. I mean, this is something really serious, and this we need to work around. This is really a national level campaign is required to have a right over fishing, because if we don't have a right over fish, right over water, then we have no access to fish either. And not only the water, plain right, but also quality of water, because good fish needs good water. And the next question about negotiations, about that what you asked me to do. Of course, there are a number of negotiations that fishing, and of course, your second part, migrants have absolutely no right. No rights whatsoever, anywhere. So they are extremely vulnerable section of people within fisheries. And the next vulnerable, and vulnerability increases because many of these people who migrate to fishing are tribal people, Adivasi people. Their literacy levels is extremely low. I've seen it in Goa. So the exploitation chances are very, very high. So literacy, migration, and the exploitation work hand in hand. I've seen, I won't go in detail of examples because of paucity of time. And Sundarbans, I just want to add one more thing, is the kind of restrictions that we have got. In fact, the negative of rights is that deprivation of rights. Somebody over here referred about, I think the gentleman left from here. He referred to the reserved areas. And now, in reserved areas, restriction to fishing is extremely, there are lots of restrictions. And now there are increase. There are proposals also, I think they declared, increase of the protected areas within Sundarbans. And in fact, our unions there are planning to launch on opposition to the resistance to it. And this is also the case also, we've got in Bihar, we have a situation of a dolphin sanctuary. And there, after declaration, after some years, current status there is that if you go fishing, a lot of fishing communities are facing difficulty, and even some are even arrested. So this is happening across the board. And what we are proposing, what is the alternative? What is the solution? What's the way out? Way out is that wherever these sort of bodies are there, regulatory bodies, there has to be representative of the fishing communities, fishing unions on a decision-making bodies. Nowhere it is there. On ports authorities who are regulating the fishing bodies, there needs to be a representation. Coastal zone management authorities which are there needs to be representation. The fisheries department, which has got this jurisdiction of fishing, there needs to be representation. And it is not there. Only thing that what we've seen now in Kashmir, or 15 days back, the Wular Lake, they have set up a Wular Management and Conservation Authority in Kashmir, and they have included fishing community or unions there as a representative. A legal status has been given for consultation as a part of the authority to the fishing union. And also we are lobbying the same thing for Loktak Lake in Manipur. So this is happening across India, and decision making is a key. And to get the decision making, forming unions of the fishing community, organizing them for power is very, very important. Without that, we will just be talking. And just the way we hear about violence of green revolution, we will also be hearing about victims of blue economy.
So important. We have one coastal regulatory zone, the act, which has been kind of gradually being diluted year after year, and otherwise that act could play a very important kind of baseline for variety of these issues. But on the migrant communities, I'll specifically ask Aarti, because they did quite a significant work during the pandemic. The fishing communities, migrants, they were not as visible to our naked eyes as it was to other set of migrants. So would you like to kind of...
Sure, just very quickly only, but I mean, to your question about rights itself, from its roots in colonial times, but we have a whole matrix of regulations that cover coastal marine spaces. So there's the wildlife laws, the CRZ laws, you have the fisheries related laws, and you have a whole bevy of land related laws, right? So to kind of understand all of this, the one thing that we do know is that recorded rights are really poor. You might have some, you have to really dredge it out from all kinds of archival sources to actually prove that a community has been there. So many other activists have also said, FRA ke through why don't you try to extend to marine and coastal ecosystems and all that. It's much difficult because you have forests, you have to have contend with certain definitional barriers, but otherwise also just trying to pull out claims is difficult. But this also is a way forward for us, that because, I mean, we have all kinds of legal spaces, and as Sebastian says, you've got to go in and claim those spaces somehow. Our history of the fish worker struggles and all that is also that, when you had CRZ come in 91, they just threw the word "Acha gauthan hona chahiye isme," some words related to the commons. Somebody has got to go use that and reclaim it, which is what was happening. That's also a positive history. It's just come down a little bit now. We have new laws that make it a little more difficult, but there is possibility to build capacities and actually intervene on those legal systems. And many activities are happening, across the Indian coastline to actually try and reclaim rights by trying to evoke memories of those rights, find a language to document them, share them, and then see if you need to take redress in courts or some other bureaucratic procedures. So those are all possibilities. On the question of migrants, I think it just came to light much more after the pandemic, right? Everybody started seeing migration everywhere. Fish workers, I mean, we understood for ourselves also the enormity of the problem, that you have actually such a crisis in the fisheries, in the fish catch, that you have migration, which is a very, very long migration. By the way, is nothing new. It is an old South Asian phenomena. We've been doing it for about 100 odd years. So nothing wrong, nothing bad about it. This is how different nations have been formed. But this is a distress-oriented migration that you have from the east coast largely going to the west coast, from being like, sort of independent owners of your labor in small-scale fisheries to becoming sort of a working class a person who is really alienated from their labor to work in either construction or to work in trawling and more mechanized forms. So that you have one big problem about not only is who is a fisher, whose responsibility is this migrant. So if you go to the fisheries department, they're like, go to labor department. Labor department is like, ye log to fisheries ka hai, hum lena dena nahi hai. So this is the problem with the liminal community, that you belong to nobody and you are everybody's also when it comes to extraction. So, but even in this, see, always when there is a problem, there is also a possible way out of it. I would just say that in trying to find a way forward, you should not limit yourselves to anything. Just as fish workers themselves have never limited themselves to one opportunity, I think we should also, as allies of fish workers, do the same thing. Try and see what multiplicity of opportunities do you have to engage and find openings. Yeah. Hey, you had a question, right?
Right. I think, do we have time for this, or?
I don't know. Just say your question out of curiosity.
No, so I'm mostly coming from my own educational background, which is more inclined towards geopolitics and maritime security, and global fisheries market. Right, it's a soaring space and industry in itself, and that's how trawlers end up moving because there are no boundaries. They end up coming into certain territorial zones or coastal zones that exclude the EEZ, which is the 200 nautical miles that you were talking about. Which ends up leading to conflicts with certain coastal communities. We saw that in the Somali piracy, that entire thing that happened in the early 2000s. Then it went to the Gulf of Guinea, west of Africa. Now you see certain, thank you Sebastian sir for pointing out towards how it's happening in the Indian coastline too. Which is just making me wonder about the entire concept of oceans, right? I think ma'am, you spoke about the non-human world of the oceans at large. And now we have imagined this net zero concept, which is pushing for, thermal powers, solar energy, all these cool words that are now just being packaged everywhere. Ultimately, they're going to rely on certain minerals, right, which you have to mine on land. But now we're shifting to the ocean beds to mine these minerals. We have the Clarion-Clipperton zone, which has now become this hotbed. This geopolitical race is happening towards going there, mining all these beautiful minerals, which are going to help in the whole conversion towards the 2070 net zero targets, right? So makes me wonder, like, what are we doing to the oceans? Because ultimately, we know more about the moon than what we know about what's happening in the oceans, right? And that's a very scary thing because we're disturbing certain ecological zones that we have no clue about in the hope that this is going to be the silver bullet that saves us or our future generations. I don't know where the question went amongst all of this, but yeah, how do we then reimagine or make oceans or even coastal communities at large more prominent in spaces like these, right? Because it's a very niche space in itself that. And I think when I look back into my own education, like when you look at the Indian map, right, everyone's looking at the map in this one way, which is focused on the Himalayas at the top, and you know how the map looks like. But I went for this internship a few years back, focusing on maritime security, and he just overturned the map, pura ulta. And then I see the entire oceanic space in front of me, right? And that was like, wow, I never saw that as part of the map, right? So I think there has to be this decolonization of how we imagine knowledge itself, because it's all coming from the West, right? I think, sir, you had mentioned about stewards. There was some different community conference who was also talking about where are we deriving these words from? Most of them coming from the global North. So, I mean, a lot of things need to be reimagined in terms of, I think it was a rant more than a question, but thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you summarized it pretty well for all of us, actually. And I think the one niche step that we have taken is that in this commons convening, we are talking about coastal is itself is a good starting point of this, and we have to kind of see it, feel it, to understand the complexity of it. I think whosoever has put their hands into that, they have seen that it's not an easy space. And what we have also seen that very less number of social scientists who are engaging in the coastal scape, and we would encourage actually a lot of young scholars who are taking interest in research, social science research. I think also look at the coastal scape. Not that would be, yes. So with that, I will hand it over to Sisir, and we can.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Amalendu and other Aarti and everyone. All panelists here. So you have we have our lunch today by making people sitting here might be understanding that how complex it is. It is not. It is in being more complex than land, what we are talking about. And it's also very urgent to look at these places. Thank you very much for raising other geopolitics around mining and other issues. When we're talking about coasts, we are also talking about fisheries. A lot of talk about fisheries. It's very difficult to condense this discussion into 1 hour. And we lost 15 minutes in Ali. We can talk on days because we are the small group, very passionate. That's why we want to tell our stories. So in that sense, this is what we wanted to do, to look at, to unearth the whole possibility, see how things are there. We raised some questions, just scratched the surface. Hope enough inquisitiveness in the mind, and they are there with us. Anyone have anything to elaborate more, they are with the lunch, you can just catch them. So without wasting your time, I'll just invite Father Marianus, he's the director of XISS, to felicitate our panelist of today with the token of appreciation.
Everybody needs a shawl for spending time on coastal.
So it's Supriya. Thank you very much for flying out today from Goa to here with this Russ. Thank you so much. Yeah. Keep fighting. Keep the fire on. Aarti, thank you so much. Keeping the whole coastal agenda. Yeah. Amal, thank you so much for actually making it happen. He had some problem at home, but he could make it. Thank you. Sebastian Rodriguez, thank you so much for bringing so much shoes. Yeah. Madam Genia, today morning, early morning at 4 a.m., starting from IIT Kharagpur to reaching here, then catching a cab and running here to the place. So thank you so much. So we'll take a picture. Thank you so much.